Welcome to the Practice You podcast. My name is Elena Brower. Let's dive into today's conversation regarding life's myriad transitions and how we refine our responses in our relationships, our wellness, our households, our work, and in our practices. You are invited to learn and love and listen with me. Welcome to Practice You. Welcome back to the podcast. I have with me an author whom I admire greatly today, who's becoming a friend. The title of the book is BFF. I can't even believe it. This author's name is Christie Tate. She is one of my heroes. She's a Chicago-based writer and essayist. She has been published in the New York Times in the Modern Love section. She's been published in the Rumpus, the Washington Post, Chicago Tribune, McSweeney's Internet Tendency, Eastern Iowa Review. And one person whom we share deep admiration for is Kiese Laymon, and he selected her essay called Promised Lands as the winner of the New Ohio Review's nonfiction contest. That is no small thing, my sister.
It was Kiese. A total highlight of my life.
Yeah, I would imagine. Our listener, if you haven't listened to my episode with Kiese Laymon, that is well worth your time from back in, I believe it was 2020 or 2021. In any case, Christie, I'm so honored to have you here. Your book and the sort of pages that avid readers sent to me, Wendy, thank you for sending it. Your book is drenched and dried because it's been in the bath so much, which is an indicator of how much I liked it. BFF is a memoir of friendship lost and found. So if you're listening to us and you are going through any transitions in your friendships of any kind, if you're trying to navigate how to be the best friend that you can be, if you've gone through issues where you've ghosted or been ghosted by a friend, this is a really good conversation for you. We won't be too long, but we will go deep quickly. Christie, you are also the New York Times bestselling author of the book Group, which I haven't read, but I'm hearing so many good things about it. BFF is my obsession, so I want to stick with this for now. You went through a lot of trials and tribulations with yourself as a kid, as a sister to your sister. We had similar experiences where our sisters were just beautiful and we just were not. So I really identified with that. And then in high school and into college, you sort of out yourself in this book as a person who ghosts people, as a person who could be a better friend but really has no knowledge of how to be one. And I would love to start with kind of what was the impetus for calling this book BFF, Best Friend Forever. It's something we wrote down a lot in the 80s and the 70s. I would love to hear what drove you to name this book that.
Oh, I love that question. And the impetus really was in the 70s and 80s when I was coming of age and writing in yearbooks. I felt really haunted by the notion of BFF. I felt like being a young girl meant that I was supposed to be really good at friendship. I was supposed to have a BFF. I was supposed to be a BFF. And it was supposed to be smooth sailing, tons of fun. And I didn't know how to do real life on the back of that fantasy. And there's something that's encapsulated in the BFF. There's something girlish for me about BFF, but it was something that I had to reckon with as a full-grown woman, deep into her adulthood, into my motherhood. I still had to confront the ghosts of this notion that friendship is easy, it's a birthright, it's something that I had to work very hard at, that brought me great sorrow before I could get to great joy. And I really wanted to press on that notion, these three little words, BFF, and how much of a bruise that is on my soul because of the way that I behaved and the way that I didn't know how to reckon with the fantasies versus reality until I was an adult.
Wow. It's interesting, the book by page 7, you're already sharing with us a couple of the scandals with Liam and Amy and Saren, and then we're sitting in the meeting with you. We're watching Meredith, who becomes a pretty prominent figure in the book. I would love to hear a little bit about your reflections on her from the vantage point of now, having read the book.
Yeah, Meredith is a person who, she plopped into my life. Well, I guess she pushed her way into my life. I had such a narrow idea of friendship. We became close friends when I was in my mid-30s. And I'd seen her around for years. We met in a 12-step recovery group, and we would see each other very, very regularly. But I literally think I didn't see her as a friend because she wasn't my age. That's how limited I was around who can be a friend. She was an older woman. She decided not to have children, and we seemed so different. I'm like, well, we're not going to be friends. I'm going to go to brunch with all the younger women who were all, about to have babies, and we do brunch and we're starting our careers. And it reminds me of like having blinders on, but she saw something in me, and she'd heard me share in meetings enough about my struggles with both friendship and sisters. I have one sister, and my struggles in those relationships, she recognized them because she had them too. I don't know. It was like divine inspiration. She approached me one day and she said, you know what? I think we could really help each other. I think we can be better at friendship, but I think we have some work to do. And when I look back on that, I just heard her saying, we. And it's a very joyous word when you're as isolated and sort of had as many broken down relationship. To hear this woman smile at me and held out her hand and said, let's stop saying we can't be good at friendship. Let's stop saying we suck at this and let's dig in. I was nervous. I was scared. She had a reputation as a spiritual guru, which is well earned. And I just thought, if someone offers an invitation, I hope to God I'm a person who says yes. And I was, even with all my reservations.
Right. It's interesting to see how that relationship unfolded too, because in the end, it's like anything else that we're trying to get good at, friendship. It's just a matter of many steps, actions, thoughtfulnesses, kindnesses, offerings of dignity, really, that make a friendship, like with anything else. If you're trying to learn how to write or, practice yoga or art, paint, just takes a lot of practice. Piano, speak Spanish, a lot of practice, and small moments of practice that lead to a certain proficiency. So cool. We're on page 90 now. You were being celebrated for your engagement. You finally were letting friends hold you close. It finally felt easy and natural. It finally felt like they'd always be there. And you were finally kind of coming into your own in a cool way. You were then at a meeting about 6 weeks later, Saturday morning. Meredith was late, and something changed. So interesting. You were pregnant. And I loved this moment because she really was so excited and celebrating you, and all you could think about was your friend who couldn't get pregnant. Mm-hmm. And this is something that comes up a lot for so many of us. We have something wonderful that happens. We know somebody who can't, for whatever reason, do that thing. So it's hard to celebrate. Or, on the other side, we're in the position of not being able to do that thing, and someone near us is in the middle of a really big life celebration.
Yeah. Oof.
And I wonder if we could talk a little bit about that, because it seems very front and center. And I know there's a concept in Eastern philosophy called mudita, which is one of the 4 Brahma Viharas, the qualities of heart that one can hold to move through life in a way that feels easeful and loving. Mudita is sympathetic joy, basically sharing happiness for somebody else's happiness that maybe isn't your own. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how that unfolded.
Yes. Oh, that's such a beautiful concept. I love it that there's words for these deep concepts, even if they're not in my native language. It's such a wonderful surprise to learn that word. And for me, it's been a real tremendous trick in my friendships, how to hold joy for other people when I'm holding my own sorrow on the exact same subject. I can't tell you how many baby showers I had to go into the bathroom and cry because I was still in disastrous love affairs and really wanted a family and could not even imagine. I couldn't imagine a second date, much less a family. And I would go to the bathroom and cry. And when it was my turn and I had a great joy that other friends felt deprived of, it was very hard for me to own my joy and celebrate it, and I didn't want to withhold it from them. Like, pregnancy became a big flashpoint because I was the last of my friends to find a partner and settle down, and they were all well married, and I'm still, online dating. But then suddenly I got pregnant, and all of a sudden the shoe was on the other foot, and I have this incredible blessing that came so quickly. And I had other friends who were still in the heartbreaking cycle of fertility treatments, and they did not want me to withhold from them, but also I just did not have the skills and the practice. You mentioned practice earlier. I didn't have enough time under my belt at being a friend who knew how to hold my joy and to let other people have their feelings. I would always trip up in relationships when there's intense feelings. Number one, I'm super intense and I have a ton of feelings, and I'm attracted to people like that. So you can see there's minefields coming at me every week. And I remember saying to Meredith on that morning, I came so close to saying, not that I didn't want my baby, but that I was just way more focused on my friend who wanted a baby and had been trying longer than I had. I felt like I jumped the line, and it was impeding my ability to celebrate my pregnancy, which was very much wanted and longed for. But I felt like I can't let all the joy in until all of my friends are similarly situated. And that's no one was asking that of me. I was just kind of enmeshed, pretty codependent. Like, if we want to put language to this, it's enmeshed and codependent and having a hard time being in my own skin because I knew about other people's discomfort. And it makes it real tricky to do friendship when you're busy bopping into someone else's head and body.
Yep. It's funny, a few pages later, I folded this one down too. On page 109, you talk about how you had so many bad habits. This is a quote from the book. Insecurity, jealousy, codependence, conflict avoidance, fear, anger. Meredith was certain that her God would heal her, and all this work, the writing, talking, sharing, would take her where she wanted to go. I didn't share her faith. Do we ever really change? I asked. Appreciably, is it really possible? And Meredith, after a little talk that you go through, Meredith nods and she says, could you do the trick that some recovery people do, the one where God is an acronym for good orderly direction? You could pray for good orderly direction instead of to God.
Mm.
I really love this. Anne Lamott mentions good orderly direction too when she talks. You were pretty ambivalent previously about the acronyms of recovery, hokey. I can totally relate to that. But it's hard to argue, you say, the downside of good orderly direction. And I would love to talk a little bit about that for perhaps our listener who, might really resonate with that and might really be able to say, okay, you know what, I don't have to pray to someone or something. I could pray for good orderly direction.
Oh, I love this question. And I'm a morning pages devotee from a la Julia Cameron. So every single morning I get to write that out. I get to ask the universe for good orderly direction because I've tried to find the loophole and there isn't one, which is such a beautiful thing. And Meredith was so smart, it was so divine that she offered that to me because she had a lot of faith, and it looked from my perspective very traditional. She had faith in a higher power, and she chose to call her higher power God, and that really worked for her. And I'm over here squunched up in a ball saying, well, look how bad religion is. And she'd say, I'm not talking about religion, I'm talking about God. And she had done the work to separate all that, and I just couldn't I wasn't there yet. I hadn't had the life experience. I didn't have that muscle that she had. But I really, really experienced an unlocking when she said to pray for good, orderly direction, because I'm the type of person, like, my brain gets going, I'm spinning, my stomach hurts, I'm trying to balance all the plates and please everybody and twist myself into a pretzel and don't say no or just overfunction, just all the things that the bad habits I sort of still harbor. If I just think of the phrase good, orderly direction, my shoulders come down, my breathing just comes down a notch, and I'm able to think clearly, at least just think of good orderly directions. Like, I just have to walk in a straight line from here. I don't have to fix everything or anyone. What is the next right thing? What would good orderly direction look like? And it trips me out of that spin cycle that I get into. And now it's associated with Meredith, my dear friend, who I know it worked for her. And she used to tell me, borrow my faith. If you don't have faith, if you don't believe, borrow my belief. And I'd be like, okay. I mean, why not? Why not try it? What I was doing wasn't working that great. I might as well try someone else's jam.
Mm. It's part of how you got through that whole situation with Anna. Later in the story, I'm on page 193 now, Meredith says, I want you to hear that I think you deserve this. Some pain is good pain. When someone recovers from frostbite, it hurts like hell. Meredith sort of wriggles her fingers at this moment, her rings softly clacking against one another. She goes on, all that feeling and sensation returning to your fingertips or toes is screaming pain. That's what healing is. It's not warm lights and lavender pillows. It's guts, it's blood, it's body parts, shocked with new blood flow that feels like a too bright, searing pain pushing you to the brink of death. When they put people suffering from frostbite in a bath to warm them up, they often give them narcotic pain medication. And you hilariously ask her, where's my fentanyl? And she says, right here. This is the point that I underlined. She gestures at the space between you. Like the friendship was the only pain meds that you needed. And it's such a beautiful lesson. Those lessons that come when there are no words needed to be exchanged. I would love to hear about how you finally moved through that whole situation with Anna and what that was like for you, in case somebody's listening who's moving through something that's really hard with an old friend.
Sure. I thought that I would go to my grave feeling an intense, white, hot envy. It was always someone, right? There was always an object of my envy that I was just like, oh, she's perfect. And I would have a somatic reaction to these objects, these women. I would put them on a pedestal and I would talk about their hair and their body and their smarts and their talent. And Anna was one that came along. We were friends. So that's part of the confusing part, right? Like, I picked someone who's actually a truly, truly lovely, beloved person. And then I get so strangled by my own envy and my adoration of them, which those things aren't necessarily bad. I adore many of my friends, but there was this thing I was doing with Anna where I was so diminished. It wasn't simply that she has beautiful shiny hair, which she does. It was that, but by comparison, mine is mousy and limp and middle-aged looking. And I could go on and on. Any compliment to her, there was a subtext that I am diminished. I am not as good. I will never be as good. It was so problematic for me that I took this to Meredith and she was like, this is not about Anna. On some level, I knew that. At this point, I'd had enough recovery and therapy to know that anything that painful has an impression. It's a fossil from my past. And that was when I had to do my sister work. My impression of myself was that I was the schlumpy, problematic, messy, snotty-nosed, kind of ratty-haired sister. And then along came my younger, golden, beautiful sister who was like the better girl, and I was just a mess. And that's what I was bringing into my relationship with Anna at the age of 42. And one night I was in such a fever pitch of my envy over Anna and all the things she had that I perceived myself as not having. I engaged in self-harm. And it was so sobering and so humbling to be a grown woman with a good life. I had children I loved. I had a husband. I had a job. And I wanted to hurt myself because Anna was better. It was like my language around this was so young. It was like the youngest part of me, like, she's better, she wins. What? Like, that's not how an adult woman talks about her friends. So what I chose to do with Meredith's help is to go back and look at what was I projecting onto Anna and just go back and let that little kid have her say. Meredith and I would do a bunch of writing assignments, like it was like school, and we'd read them to each other. And I think that probably would have gotten me a pretty far way, even if I would have handed it to my therapist. What really healed me was that Meredith had a similar relationship with her sister. And she too would go around and project perfection onto her friends and then walk away with self-loathing. And we both looked at it and we started to just unravel that and untell that story to each other and reflect back to each other, like, we could let this go. We could practice. And that's what we started to do together.
What a gift. What a gift she gave you. Wow. She ends up getting really sick, Meredith. I'm finally on page 205. And there's something that you give her that's so beautiful. She is screaming from her car. She's finding out that she has to do a whole set of scans again. She's just angry. She's angry to be sick. She catches her breath. She is crying with her mouth open. She is wailing. And you write animal sounds. I gripped the side of my desk and took deep breaths as I listened. The sound was raw and haunting. I'd never heard anything like it. I sat still and focused on my own breathing, in and out, in and out. And I want to just point that out. I circled that at a time when I was studying MBC very, very closely. And I want to circle that because sometimes we've all had friends who've gotten sick. We all probably have friends who are sick. And I circled this and I wrote, sometimes the best thing we can do is just breathe with the other person. And I don't know, I circle this and I bring this up to sort of bring it forward, but I also would love to know, like, how was that for you? How was it to have this person who had literally opened her heart, mind, body, soul, faith, friendship to you, teaching you basically by her example how to walk through the world, how to be a good friend, how to sort of pull threads of things in order to feel more practiced and better about your own capacities. And then she gets very sick. How was that for you?
I feel like the word that always comes to mind when I think about that period and how close Meredith let me come to her, it just feels like holy, like sacred. It was the most intimate thing. She was so vulnerable when she was sick. And the last thing she wanted was anyone to see her. And I remember one of the times in the hospital, she didn't want anybody to come to see her. She wore dentures because of, a years long history of pretty severe eating disorder. So she had dentures and she was so afraid that the doctors wouldn't put her teeth back in. She wouldn't let anybody come. And I totally relate to that. So this is like, for her to let me come and see and hear and witness, it was the most incredible act of generosity on her part, not on mine. And I'm so grateful that I had some practice under my belt so that when she called me in that real guttural pain, I knew my job was to sit and breathe. And like, people talk about holding the space, and I'm like, I don't even know what that means. But the truth is, I do know what that means. It means breathing and being present. And so much of my relationships prior to this like very intense experience with Meredith, I would get in trouble in friendships trying to fix things and shut people down because their feelings made me uncomfortable. Like, don't feel like that. Your kids are super smart, or you look amazing. Just trite, not being fully present, not really engaging in the moment because I'm uncomfortable. And I feel like I can drop a pin to that moment when I was having that conversation with Meredith, where I was like, oh, this is what it means. I mean, you can't tell someone who's gotten horrible medical news, it's going to be okay. because it's not. And there are no words. And when there are no words, there's nothing but my breath and my presence. She gave me the opportunity to see that that was more than enough, way more than enough.
Such a beautiful teaching. The Zen peacemaker's 3 tenets: not knowing, bearing witness, taking action. It's basically that. You don't have to know. You do have to bear witness and be present. And the action might look something like, as you wrote a little later, I'm on page 214 and 15. The action might be just shutting the fuck up.
Yes.
You finally saw Meredith after several weeks of not seeing her, not being in touch, and she was really just isolating and insulating herself, I think, at that time. And you were, of course, worried, as all of us would be. Oh my God, did I do something wrong? Did I screw up? I don't know. And she finally texted you back at some point. You went to coffee. And as you sat down, you write, "I slid a note across the table. Dear Meredith, I have your back always. Love, Christie." At which point she held my hand across the table and I did the holiest thing of all. I shut the fuck up.
Yeah, holiest and hardest, I'll add.
Yes, because we can't fix it. We can't do it. We can't heal it for people. You write her a letter and you share with her the friendship forensics that you did with Callie. You share with her the deep desire of what you value most in friendship. Someone who wants to own her own part and do the work of understanding herself. That's what I always loved most about you, Meredith. No one worked harder at understanding, excavating, and healing than you did. So beautiful, just stunning, the long letter that you write to her at the end of the book. I'm like pretty choked up thinking about reading it. But at the end, you write, we're on page 267 if you're following along. At night, when I can't sleep because I'm anxious about the future or the state of the world, I think about my friends, one at a time. It soothes me to think of each of their histories, senses of humor, intelligence, warmth, professions, strengths, challenges, traumas, triumphs, children, signature desserts. It's a cross between a gratitude list and counting sheep. What a privilege to be alive and have friends, right? Wish you could see and feel all this. Just so beautiful. It makes me cry. I've reread this last bit many times, and gosh, just so beautiful. Several letters at the end, our listener, where Christie writes to Meredith of all the sort of understandings that have emerged, as they often do when someone we love passes on, and there's somehow this kind of transmission, if you will, of information that I just can't explain myself, but I've definitely experienced it. And I wonder, how are you now since the book came out? How are you with Meredith as she's passed on? And, what's emerging at this time?
Yeah, I definitely recommend anyone, if you are missing someone, write a book about them because then you get to talk about them a lot. It's been such a privilege to talk to other readers who've had Merediths in their lives and to DM with them on, social media, and they'll send me pictures like, this is my Meredith. And what's really, really profound to me is that I still have a relationship with Meredith. She's still there. Like, I can't really describe it. Like, she's the screensaver on my computer, and I wrote this book about her. So I have the opportunity to talk to readers and people like you who want to talk about friendship and know my story through my book. I just feel like it's probably because I have done some work and have cleared out my heart and some of the wreckage of my past that I have room to continue to have a relationship. As challenging as it is with someone who's no longer living, I do feel like I still can hold her close. I still can show up for the relationship. And, what does that look like, right? Showing up for the memories, showing up for the lessons. And every year on her birthday, I actually reach out to Anna, who was a mutual friend. The person I was most jealous of is also a very close friend of Meredith's. And I reach out to her, and I have the impulse sometimes when I'm thinking of Meredith or I'm talking to a mutual friend, there's a feeling of like, I have like the tiniest thought, like to withhold it or to like not say it. But then I'm always like, oh my God, say it. Everything that she gave me, keep it alive. And so, the promise I sort of make to the relationship is when she comes into my head, I share it, I talk about it, and it makes it feel like, not that she's not gone, because she is, but that I can continue to have the relationship, which is my biggest gripe about myself as a friend, was that I couldn't do long-term relationships, because once there was a big transition, I didn't know how to be a pen pal if we'd once been roommates. What? I'm just leaving. I'll make new friends. So the fact that I feel like I can still have a relationship and a friendship that feels altered but still vital with someone who's been gone since 2019, that is proof of my own evolution, and that doesn't happen without Meredith. So she's still a big part of my life, and I hope that continues to be true.
Yeah, beautiful. That is some pretty good advice, by the way. Write a book about the person if they're gone. You also have workshops where you bring together writers in intimate settings and help them take their work forward. Our listener, it's worth it to go to ChristieTate.com, and I'm going to spell her name for you. Christie, Tate, Tate.com. To check out her workshops. I bet you those are going to be some pretty valuable hours to spend with you. And I also wanted to let our listener know I have my galley copy with my folds and notes. And if you would like it, all you have to do is leave a comment about this episode and a review and let me know that you've done so. And then I will go ahead and send it along to the first person who does. It's such a joy, Christie, to be in touch and to learn from and with you. Your book is beautiful. I really thank you so much for bringing my awareness to all of these matters, but particularly the finer points of what it means to be a good friend. I thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for this conversation. I appreciate it. I learned something, which is always my favorite, and I'm grateful for all the things you do for readers and listeners and writers and human. It's a joy to be part of this.
Thank you so much. More soon.